From WLWT, this is Let's Talk Cincy, presented by Western and Southern Financial Group. Put our financial strength behind you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Curtis Fuller, and welcome to Let's Talk Cincy. Coming up today, remembering the legacy of a civil rights giant. Also, the comeback of an Olympic boxer after facing his toughest fight outside the ring. But first, we go behind the scenes and talk one-on-one with Academy Award winner John Ridley. By now, you know filming is taking place here in Cincinnati for a movie starring actress Regina King. Director John Ridley explains why Cincinnati has become a prime destination for movie makers.
I'm happy to be here in Cincinnati. I'm happy to bring dollars to Cincinnati.
Academy Award winner John Ridley is heading up the crew in town, filming the new movie titled Shirley, based on the life of the late Congresswoman and presidential candidate Shirley Chisholm. This project is something the film's star Regina King has talked about doing for a long time.
I first met Regina, oh my gosh, 6, 7 years ago when we were doing American Crime together. Our careers were in different places. Regina's trajectory has always been pretty much straight up. But one of the topics that literally, truly, that we were breaking bread, sitting down together, trying to figure out our commonality, she brought up Shirley Chisholm. One of the things I really, truly admire about Regina is not just her capacities as an actor, but her capacities as an instrument to deliver empathy. And this is one of the most empathetic, one of the most powerful human stories that I've had the opportunity to tell, and I've had the opportunity to tell some really amazing stories.
Regina King has ties to Cincinnati, but Ridley says it's much more than those connections, bringing Hollywood to the Queen City. And that's why we've seen so many productions choose Cincinnati as a cinema backdrop.
Why Cincinnati? Because Ohio has tax incentives. Ohio chose to bring business here. And I'll tell you straight up, in my opinion, there are no better dollars than entertainment dollars. The majority of the crew that we are working with are local hires from right here. The majority of the actors, the background performers, are local hires. There are people who are coming in to visit Cincinnati, relatives of those who are working on the show, friends who are coming in. That means they are staying local. That means they are investing local. That means they are buying local. And not just locally here. Just the other day, we were shooting up in Dayton at the airport. So we are here because you have a growing and strong crew. You are here, we are here because you have exteriors that help match what we're shooting. You know, we're shooting 68 to 72. So there are some really wonderful areas that are pristine, that are like walking back in time. You have wonderful local folks. I mean, the places that we've gone, the people that we've met, they're Midwesterners. They are friendly, they are gracious, they are excited about what we're doing. I love working in LA. They're not excited about us showing up. They don't really care. That's all great, but I want to be straight with you, and I think it's really important to be straight with the constituents here and also with the politicians. We are here because there are incentives. I really encourage folks in Cincinnati, folks in Ohio, fight for film dollars. They are the best dollars. We love working here. I'm from Milwaukee. Our No Studios is in Milwaukee. I have tried to work to get Wisconsin to bring back incentives for filming. The more folks I meet here, they're wonderful. If we're bringing business, if we're bringing opportunities, I had one of the most, I know I'm probably talking too much. I had a really special day the other day on set. We were shooting about 20 minutes outside of this downtown area. There were two young kids of color, who were just fascinated by what they're doing. They showed me some of the things that they do just with their phones. To sit with these young kids and to look them in the eye and say, you know what, I was a young black kid one day. I can't say people believed in me, but I believe that I could do this. To be able to say to them, it's not just a crazy dream. It's not just Spike who's out there doing it. It's not just Jordan Peele who's out there doing it. It's not just Ava who's out there doing it. If an idiot like me, I'm not kidding you, can walk on a set and walk away with something strong. I said to these two kids who were doing more than I was at that age, I said, don't ever let anybody tell you otherwise. You can do this. And I hope it was powerful, not because I'm good at what I do, but to see, sometimes that makes the difference, is just see somebody who kind of looks like you doing it. And to know that if nothing else comes out of this experience, to come to Cincinnati, to come to a challenged neighborhood, to see two young men who are actually already doing, and say to them, come over, stand next to me. Come over and look at what we're doing. Come over and know that despite any challenges that are in front of you, you could do this. To me, that's the power of filmmaking. I hope people like this film. I know they're going to be impressed by Regina. I know they're going to find value in Shirley's story. But if outside of all that, if the only thing we did is hopefully both, but even if one of those kids says, you know what, I'm going to stay with it. You know what, I'm going to choose a camera over another way of expressing myself, then all of what we did here, there's value. There's true value.
More now of my conversation with the very talented John Ridley. Among his many accomplishments, he won an Oscar for his role in the production of the film 12 Years a Slave. Ridley is a native of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, a place where I used to live. He shared with me a project that he created, turning some old brewery space in his hometown into an amazing place for artists to write, edit, and screen their stories. It's a multi-million-dollar hub for creative people and those who support creativity.
No Studios came about, I guess it would have been 2014, and I was very fortunate. There are no two ways to say it. I had my peers, my coworkers, people who I admire, looked at my work on 12 Years a Slave and said that it was, it was worthy of honor and attention. And I can tell you, there is nothing more special than having your peers and people you admire look at your work and deem it worthy in any regard. My sister, my older sister Lisa, who's a business person, she looked at that moment and said, hey, congratulations, but it doesn't last. Every year somebody else comes along, people are honored as it should be. And she really said, look, this is a moment where potentially you can do something that is bigger than yourself. I'm from the city of Milwaukee. I love Milwaukee. It's a great city. But as you know, it's an imperfect city and a very segregated city. And that segregation, I mean, look, none of us are at our best when we're separated. We are at our best when we're together. And honestly, it was my sister's idea to create a place where people can come together to support, to celebrate, to commune, and know that when they are in that space, it's not about how we're different, it's about the similarities we have. And that's one of the things I love about working on a film set, is you see people from on a good film set, as in any strong place, you see all kinds of people, different races, different backgrounds, different faiths, different ideologies. I know people don't think like me. I know they don't vote like me. I know they don't appear like me, but we have a shared objective, and that is to take a story and share it with the world. And that's what we wanted to create at No Studios, was a place that when people came together, it didn't matter how they looked, it didn't matter how they voted, it didn't matter how they prayed. They had something in common, and that was telling stories, creating beautiful things, and coming together as a community. So we created No Studios along with our partner Chris Abley in Milwaukee, and there's been no looking back. And the way it's been embraced, the way it's been supported, the way that people have understood what our mission statement has been absolutely remarkable. It's amazing to think that just 4 or 5, 6 years ago that it was an idea, that during one of the most trying times for any space that's about bringing people together physically, that we were able to survive at all. A new business in the COVID era was, as you can imagine, incredibly challenging. But now I'm sitting here with you in the great state of Ohio, in the amazing city of Cincinnati, talking about what was once a dream, but that has come together as really an opportunity to support local artists and say, hey, you can create and you can do beautiful things. You don't have to leave the city of Milwaukee. We can bring the rest of the world to you, and we can share your beautiful vision, your ideas, and your artistry with the rest of the world. And even if we couldn't do it for one more day, it's been an amazing experience just over these last few years. Yeah, as you probably know, and this is true, this is not hyperbole, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, by real metrics, is one of the most segregated cities in America. And that means black people, people of color, and by the way, people should have the right to live wherever they want to live, but there are individuals, black individuals of a certain average income who still live in certain areas where that income is not commensurate with where they may have the opportunity to live.
And I should tell you, Cincinnati had that distinction not long ago.
It's painful. Again, people should have the right to live wherever they want to live, and if you choose to live in a neighborhood that is more reflective of you in any regard, you should. But when people still even think, when redlining is just part of who we are and part of the narrative that has grown over time, that's painful. And I'll tell you something, coming to Cincinnati, having the opportunity to film here, I don't think I've been to all 52 of those neighborhoods, but I've been to many neighborhoods. And on this film set, as I mentioned when we were talking before, to have so many different kinds of individuals from Cincinnati come together to serve this story. You know, you hear people talking now about, well, critical race theory, and if we talk about the past, we talk about history, that divides us. I'm walking on a set and I can tell you that's the exact opposite. When we understand our past, when we understand where we came from, all of us have a better understanding of where we are and what we need to do to move towards the future. So it's an incredible opportunity to be here in Cincinnati, to meet people, to work with people, to bring people together. It's an incredible opportunity to tell the story of Shirley Chisholm. An individual, by the way, it wasn't just white folks who had issues with Shirley Chisholm. There were plenty of black folks, plenty of black men in particular, who were just like, who is this woman who is running for higher office? But I can tell you there are a whole lot of people right now who look at Shirley Chisholm, someone who spoke truth to power, someone who really represented the people and not politicians, someone who really believed that every vote, every voice counts. It's amazing to be able to tell that story, but to be able to come to a city like Cincinnati that is having an amazing year, but it really is, it's really wonderful in a year where I think all of us are anticipating a reemergence, to be in a city that is on an upward trajectory, to be here to help tell this story, to share some really good times here in Cincinnati. It's been really remarkable.
Welcome back, everyone. This year marks what would have been the 100th birthday for civil rights giant Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth. He was a remarkable man who worked alongside Martin Luther King Jr. and Ralph Abernathy, the big three, they called them, in the civil rights movement. His family is planning centennial celebrations throughout this year. Today, an interview with his grandson, Steve Bester, who is now the pastor of Greater New Light Baptist Church in Avondale, the church his grandfather founded more than 50 years ago.
Being born in 1968, coming along, he was just a granddaddy. That was his whole thing. He was all about family. So his legacy is one of just, he went about doing good. It's kind of like what Christ did, just making himself to be what the people needed for the people. He didn't ask for anything, and my mother would often tell you, any money he made during that time, it was half went to the movement, half went to the church. And as far as the home, my grandmother was a nurse, so she could uphold, but they went without a lot of days because he was that determined to make sure that freedom was received by our people.
When did you realize that he was the Fred Shuttlesworth?
Well, let me go back to the future. My son Jared, who's now 27, when they made the statue down in Birmingham, we go down there and all these reporters are asking him his name, and we came back from that trip, and he's probably about 5-6 years old. He goes, "We're famous in Birmingham." So I guess somewhere around 1975-ish, maybe, I might have been 6 or 7 years old. We went to Bethel for an actual service. They were commemorating a weekend. It might have been the 20th. I don't know whatever year it was, but we all went down. We always go down for reunions, but we always stayed there in Collegeville, and everyone was at someone's house. We never had to get a hotel. It was the rooms in that town where the Shuttlesworth family, you stay at this house, that house. So we get to Bethel on Sunday morning, and it was all the mayor came, the city council came, the police chief, ironically enough, were all at this service honoring him. And I'm like, he is a big deal because, again, when we got here, I just knew what the history books were telling me. And of course, my mother and her siblings, it's a place of pain for them. So they didn't really share their experiences. I mean, being in a house, 16.6 a dynamite go off and you're in the house, that's not something you want to keep reliving over and over, although we wanted to know. So, but again, knowing it was probably 1975, Collegeville, but that's what we knew. This man is something. And then, of course, at his funeral, when they shut down the entire city of Birmingham, highways, byways, everything, there was nothing moving other than our caravan of cars, about 23 limousines and 20 cars, or however many cars it was, going from the hotel to the church. I realized this man is much bigger than he led us to know, but that's when it just hit me that, wow, he's somebody.
Do you think he's gotten the recognition that he deserves? I know people close to him respect him, but sadly, there are a lot of places you can go and ask the question, who was Fred Shuttlesworth? And they might not know who it was.
And to answer your question, quite point blank, no. He does not get the hasn't gotten what we're going to be doing here soon is going to be helping to launch some things. I can use Pastor Eugene Ellington, one of the local pastors. He and several ministers went on a trip to Israel, the Holy Land, and he asked, do you all know who plays for me? And he said, Fred Shuttlesworth's grandson. And he said half of them didn't know who Fred Shuttlesworth was. And he said, that's an atrocity for us as black men in America not to know who this man is. And so again, it's because he didn't make a parade about himself. It was all about getting these laws passed, getting the mindsets of people changed. That you can't treat, everyone has to be equal. We have to have equity and equality. And so Eugene Ellington and others who said the same thing. And I've kind of erred on the side of, well, I don't want to ruffle any feathers, but right now, being who he is and where we are with celebrating 100 years, we just see so many people want this. And so we're going to galvanize now the team to get together and make sure that we're forever. And we're going to take this whole year to do this. So we've got some things planned coming in October when his death date of October 11th. We're going to be doing some things hopefully in Birmingham, but the simulcast that we're pulling together and just letting those know that this is a man that we're going to celebrate him. And again, he wouldn't have wanted this, but hey, he's not here to tell us to stop. So we're going to go all systems go. And so now we're forming the Shuttlesworth Foundation. Of course, he had the Housing Foundation, but with this, we're launching a foundation for civil rights for people, get people back, because his name, that's exactly what he marched and fought for, but no one's picking up that mantle. You talk about the Sharptons and, of course, Jesse Jackson's and health declines, but that legacy of who's next, and it's not about anyone making the name, me or anyone else, it's just using that name to say, we're gonna stay on this platform, and all of these injustices that are still going on in law enforcement and police brutality and other things, we're going to speak to them from the Shuttlesworth Foundation. So we're reaching out to anyone, and we'll be getting out the Cash App and other things that you can actually donate to the foundation, letting you know the things that we're going to be doing. But again, it's kind of a launch and a rollout. This entire year we'll be kind of like an onion, peeling it back and rolling it out slowly.
If there is one thing that you would want, especially young people, to know about Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth, what would it be?
He used the phrase, respect all, fear none. That was the bottom line for me. In terms of his dogged determination, have respect for each and every one, red, brown, yellow, black, or white. We respect, it's not about ethnicity. You respect everyone, but the fear factor, and people, you get starstruck and, well, I can't go to this. And so he would go to the government, the mayor, the council, the legislature, to let them know, hey, my people we're paying the same taxes, we're required to do the same thing, but we're not getting the fair equity for our money that others are getting, so why can't we? And so his fearlessness to stand in that and, okay, we'll give you this. No, you're not giving me anything. If it's a right here, it's a right there. But again, you have to have a platform and a point. Don't just be out here being fearless, doing things that are haphazard. You have to have a purpose, a goal, and prioritize what you're doing, making sure you're doing, and he lived for humanity.
Finally today, the Olympic silver medalist Duke Reagan got a hero's welcome when he returned to Cincinnati from Tokyo. But just months later, this young boxer was mourning the death of his father. Now he is back in the training camp, getting ready for his first fight since the Olympics. Jatera McGee talked to him about how he is channeling his hurt and heartbreak into motivation.
Duke Ragan has already proved he can beat some of the best. The decorated boxer and Olympian brought a silver medal home to Cincinnati last summer. Duke Ragan! Now the 24-year-old has something new to prove, that he can train and win without the living reason he ever stepped inside a ring.
Every day my dad will call, so just got to take it one day at a time.
Duke's dad, Derek Ragan, died in December after contracting COVID. He was incarcerated, serving time on drug charges, then moved to the hospital without his family even being called. Duke and his siblings didn't get to say goodbye, not even on FaceTime. He's trying to fight through grief without his lifelong coach. He's been wearing boxing gloves since he was in diapers. Duke remembers his dad taking over his boxing career when he was about 15. He and his father shared that Olympic dream. Even after Derek Ragan's arrest, he coached his son over the phone.
I tell my dad what my other coach was saying, and he'll probably break it down better to me that I can more like understand. So that's probably what I miss more, like him helping me, guiding me, stuff like that.
Duke visited his dad every Sunday. In between calls to each other, Derek would call his son's coaches to check in. When Duke won silver in Tokyo, Derek also received a medal, recognizing his contributions as an Olympic coach.
It was an unbelievable moment for me. You know, like I ended up getting to see him, you know, we took a picture together.
Duke gets a new hand wrap every time he starts training camp. This time, where his dad would usually sign, he asked his sisters to leave a motivating message. It's a reminder of his why, the one still here and the one who's not.
You know, I never really care about what nobody else say, but I always care about what my dad say. So me drifting away, I know that he probably wouldn't be okay with it.
The blood, sweat, and tears now have new meaning. And his dad's memory has a permanent place in Duke's heart and on his side.
I wanted to put him like on my stomach for he can like see me fighting. When I fought, he always said that he felt like he was fighting too.
Duke Ragan says when his father was his coach, he was in the best shape of his life. His goal now is to get back to that level. His first match since Tokyo is April 9th. Well, that does it for the program today. Thanks for joining us. I'm Curtis Fuller. We'll see you next week for another edition of Let's Talk Cincy.